Good morning, everybody. How are we doing? Nice, I love the energy. I'm so excited to be here today presenting our story that has been about 18 months, almost 2 years actually in the making, and it's how we took our legacy app and we converted it into a Laravel code base. Are we pumped? Nice. Just building that anticipation. Howdy, everybody. I've been writing PHP since about 2014, tinkering on side projects, various freelance gigs. And in 2017, I got involved with an online community that was focused around Microsoft Flight Simulator. From enthusiasts right the way through to aviation professionals alike, all coming together to run a virtual airline. Now, the volunteer team at the time, they needed someone to help maintain their PHP application. And because I knew PHP, I thought, how different could it be? Well, it turns out it was very different. You see, I had come from a world where you'd have include header.php at the top of your HTML files. You'd build raw MySQLi queries to interact with the database. And I'm staring at this Laravel code base and I'm like, there's routing, models, validation. And I thought to myself, wait, people have been doing this all along? All these problems that Laravel solves elegantly, I'm out here reinventing the wheel in all my side projects. And naturally, I was hooked. I went all in on the documentation, binging Laracasts, building anything I could think of, breaking it all, figuring out why just so I could build it better, all completely self-taught. That building and shipping, and I think genuine enthusiasm for the framework is what helped land me the role here at Okfolio where I could take on this massive migration. Also, dad to 3 beautiful kids. So, yes. So I spend a lot of my time juggling priorities, making it work with whatever resources I've got available to me. And if I'd known what the legacy code base looked like, that would have probably made for a better job description when I joined Okfolio in 2022. So, before I show you what we inherited, let me show you what Okfolio looks like today and what we're actually trying to solve. You see, Okfolio is a platform that makes asbestos and hazardous materials management simpler, safer, and more compliant. Before Okfolio, this data would have lived in Excel files, paper reports, old databases, scattered everywhere, basically. Multiple versions of the same document? Probably. Manual effort to find the right information? Almost guaranteed. And see, it creates real problems because decisions made on incomplete data, version conflicts that might waste days of effort, and hazards that slip through the cracks, probably because it's buried in someone's inbox. It is asbestos that we're talking about. It's lead paint, it's hazardous materials. Getting it wrong has real consequences. So at Okfolio, we bring it all together. Inspection data, risk ratings, compliance documentation, all into one connected platform. The value isn't just a nice UI, it's reducing human error. It's about making safety information available anywhere, anytime. The platform's been built as a multi-tenant, multi-database architecture. Our clients range from small councils who might manage only a handful of assets, right the way through to state governments who may have tens of thousands of assets within their portfolio. We've got universities, utility companies, all across Australia and New Zealand. Each of our customers, they get their own isolated environment, which means their users, documentation, compliance material, all separated from each other. So, let's take a look at what it looks like. The Okfolio platform has 3 main touch points. The first being a React Native application. This is used by in-field surveyors who will be out on site capturing and auditing assets. This data is fed back to our portal in real time. Here, asset owners can view, manage, and report on all information to do with their portfolio. And then finally, make a decision to publish that to an assets safety page. Here, contractors and visitors can scan a QR code, which will take them to the safety page, allowing easy access and viewing of digital registers and safety information. One of our customers said it best: the vast improvement in data and accessibility has translated to a reduction of potential incidents of potential exposure. And that right there, that's what we're building for. Not just better software, but safer outcomes. Thank you. So that's Okfolio today. We're making compliance simpler and safer. But you see, the thing is, we didn't build this from scratch. We built it by migrating a decade-old multi-tenant beast, all without ever taking it offline. And when I say multi-tenant beast, I mean it, because I'm not just talking about one repository. Our code was spread across 6. 6 different repositories serving our platform. Let's take a look at what they looked like. The first was our client code base. This was installed into all of our tenant directories. It served as the entry point into our application, bootstrapping database connections and initializing tenant configuration. That was then fed into our common code base. This was the brains of the operation. It was all of our shared code logic living in a central directory that was sim-linked into all tenant directories. And we had our safety page, a couple of PHP files that would bootstrap the correct tenant information and display the assets safety page. Now, if you're thinking that sounds like a deployment nightmare, you're not wrong. But it's the exact kind of thing that would make migrating to Laravel interesting. And you see, we're not done there, because we also had an admin app as well. It would initialize our tenants, configuration for the whole platform, the works. We had our inspector application, which is our now React Native application, allowing capture of data out on field. And then we had an API. This was only primarily used for the inspector app, and it did have a framework attached to it, but not like you think. So we had 6 repos, we had different technologies, different deployment patterns, all serving the same platform. This is what our legacy system was. It wasn't just old code, it was an ecosystem of old code. So you've seen the repos. Now let me show you what we're actually working with inside those repos, and we'll of course start with the good. That of course being, it was written in pure PHP. Woo! But like I said, no framework attached for our common code base, which meant everything that Laravel does elegantly, things like routing, validation, database access, we'd solve ourselves with a 1,000-line God class that required a prayer before and after editing. Now, see, the thing is, we loved PHP, and we still do, which is why we'd write it wherever possible. It's also the exact reason why the next slide may hurt a little, because we even wrote our JavaScript in PHP. Right here, folks, you're looking at real production code, building JavaScript as strings, building data arrays in PHP, just to send to the front end. I mean, it worked, but it was a choice. Now, instead of routing, I'm having what we're dubbing runtime method discovery, which is a fancy way of saying we'd take the URL, we'd split it into segments, we'd instantiate a class based on the first segment, we'd check to see if the method exists using the second segment, and if it did, just echo out whatever is inside. No ORM meant that we were hand-rolling every database connection and call. You'd check if properties existed on your class, you'd build arrays of columns and values, pull whatever you need from the global scope, and ship it off to the database. Documentation? Right there. No dependency injection meant that you'd new up whatever, wherever you needed. In this case, we're sending an email, so let's pull the API key from a static property, check some magic constants to make sure we can actually send an email, and if we can, send it. This right here is what you're up against when people say, just add tests before you refactor. Input validation? More of a suggestion in this case. Maybe there's an if statement somewhere, maybe not. There was no consistent pattern, no validation layer. Just hope whoever wrote this statement was having a good day. Now, we weren't complete animals because we did have Composer, kind of, because we also had our own version of the autoloader that was running in parallel, and yep, that's the entire vendor folder committed to Git. Now, if you're out there and you've ever been asked to onboard a developer into a legacy code base, you probably know this feeling. And remember, this is before we had AI, though honestly, even with AI, it still kind of feels the same. Now, before we get to the migration, there's one more thing that I need to tell you about, and it's that API. You see, I told you that we had a framework attached, and it's not like what you think. We had Lumen 6 installed, and for those not familiar, Lumen was Laravel's micro framework. It was lightweight, designed for APIs or microservices, and so we had something modern in place, right? Seems promising? Except everything, and I mean everything, was done in one controller, in one method. One massive method handling all of our API logic. Jordan, how can an API handle just one method? Or just use one method? Well, I have two words for you. Stringified JSON. The entire API request was a JSON string that got passed to figure out exactly what to do. Every single request. Yep. Eventually, enough was enough. We needed to start modernizing our stack, and we began by tackling the biggest pain points, the ones affecting both our team and our customers. At the top of that list was our aging inspector PWA application. It was written in a technology in JavaScript called lit. We wanted to modernize that, and that's where we started first. We started rewriting it in React, which eventually turned into React Native, and that's definitely a migration story for another day. But eventually, while that work was happening, we started a side quest to figure out how can we upgrade our API. Now, like all good side quests at Okfolio, they usually start at 2 p.m. on a Friday, and so that's when we lent into a previously used tool, Laravel Shift. Jason McCreary, who spoke this morning, creator of Laravel Shift, tool that makes migrations effortless, we used the tool to convert our Lumen API into a Laravel API. And this kickstarted our standardization process. Once migrated, we could finally start to interact with our API and data using Laravel's native patterns and conventions. If you're interested in learning more about Shift, that one there is for you. So with the API upgraded and running smoothly in Laravel, we had breathing room to tackle the real challenge of a common code base. This was where all of our core business logic lived, and it's where we needed a real strategy. You see, there were multiple options at play, but we boiled it down to just two, and we weighed them both up. Naturally, we thought greenfield is the answer. Rewrite everything, clean slate, best practices from day one, no legacy baggage. Sounds like an instant yes, if you ask me. Except there was one big but. We'd lose years of business logic decisions. All those edge cases that we'd discovered and handled, gone. All that tribal knowledge built into the code base, gone with it. We'd be rebuilding not just the code, but all those decisions too. Plus, we were going to hit a big bang migration moment. One day, we're going to need to flip the switch and just hope everything works. And that's terrifying when you're dealing with enterprise clients who are managing critical safety data, and it's not a risk that we wanted to take. So we landed on the gradual conversion option. It's also known as the Strangler pattern. The API upgrade had proved that Laravel could work in our ecosystem, and now we could apply that same approach to our common code base. We'd migrate piece by piece, keeping everything running and preserving all that business logic. Once our common code base was ready, we'd then be able to take our API that we had previously upgraded and move that into the common code base. No big bang, no terror, just steady progress. Here's how we made that pattern work for us, broken up into 4 steps. To start with, we created a fresh Laravel application inside a new directory. From there, we created a legacy folder and moved all of our common code into this legacy folder. After that, we updated our client code base to instead now load the Laravel code base. And to finish it off, now we were inside Laravel, we had a catch-all route that would then load the legacy code base. The last step there is actually where all the magic happens. You see here, this catch-all route meant that any request that didn't match a route that we had defined in Laravel would hit this and be piped through to a legacy controller that we had created. Inside that legacy controller, we'd fire up output buffering. We'd require the original legacy code base. Once we come out of the code base, we would then grab the buffer and then return a response through Laravel. If we dip into the legacy code again, this is what we were up against. Body start on some classes. Don't forget that JavaScript. Here's the login page. Close the tags. And because we were finished, we didn't need the request anymore, and so die was called. The thing is, that wasn't going to work for us in Laravel land. And so instead of calling die, we had this legacy exit script exception. What that meant was that every time that we called die in the legacy code base, we'd instead throw this exception, which would mean when that bubbles back up to the legacy controller, we could catch that very specific exception, clean and get the output buffer, and then return a response. Simple. The legacy code had absolutely no idea that it was being wrapped in Laravel. Redirects, they were another challenge too. Legacy code was full of them. Raw header calls and die, and we needed a way to intercept those two. We chose to create a helper function, which was an easy way for us to accept a location and an optional status, which would mean that again was a simple find and replace across the code base, where we could drop in our helper function, catch that very specific exception, and again, return a response. Slowly but surely, we got better and better every day. Andrew Morgan of Titan wrote a fantastic article, How to Modernize an Aging PHP Application. And we took inspiration from this, and it helped kickstart our standardization process. So, we had a wrapper in place. Laravel was controlling the request cycle. The legacy code was quarantined behind the catch-all route. Now the real work could begin. We need to figure out where to start, and ideally, we tackle security first, followed by any high-traffic areas. But, see, the thing is, we didn't have any known security issues that we knew about, and apart from our gut feel and the dashboard, we didn't really know what was high traffic. So instead, we started with the low-risk stuff first, the developer experience, testing, logging, debugging, those foundational pieces that would eventually make the rest of the feature migration possible. Now, to do any of that properly, we need to fix our migrations and seeders. Our migrations had been handled in our client code base over the years, which meant they had naturally drifted up, over time. Some tenants had different starting points, some had different schemas, because as the migrations evolved, so did the original code. It was very hard to spin up a clean dev environment and trust that it matched production. But we needed to start somewhere. So we provisioned a brand new tenant, and we took a schema dump, which gave us our baseline, a clean, known state to work from, which meant now we could fully utilize Laravel. Proper migrations, proper seeders, proper good. Most importantly, we could start testing tests. We all know they're important, right? But without them, this is what it was like deploying code. Because you push one thing out, and then 3 other things break. And we needed confidence. Because the thing is, tests are everywhere, right? Sometimes we don't formalize them. We might check the water temp before we jump in for a shower, chuck some grass in the air before you go and tee off. For those of us that drive, the check engine light comes on in the car, so you walk around, you lift up the bonnet, and you're like, yep, still there. But in all seriousness, a silly check like this and a simple test like this could probably save hours of debugging. Because for us, we knew that tests would equal confidence, and we needed confidence to know that what we were shipping was working without having to rely on a full manual QA walkthrough of the whole platform every time we wanted to ship to production. This right here is the first test that we wrote, and it's still present in our test suite today. Act as an admin, get the dashboard route, and make sure that it returns okay. Simple. But it proved one very valuable thing, and it's that we could boot the legacy code base and come back out of the legacy code base and still return an okay response. And it started to allow separation from that entirely manual QA process. Because for the first time, we could start to refactor without fear, and we could start to deploy with confidence. Because for us, tests became our safety net for the entire migration. Once we had tests in place and we could deploy with confidence, everything changed. We had this new rhythm. New features built in Laravel. Bug fixes touching a legacy code base. We'd port it over to Laravel while we were there. The legacy code base became a one-way door. This right here is completely made up data, but it captures the feeling. Because as reliance on the legacy code base went down, developer happiness went up. Month by month, we were moving in the right direction. The legacy code base stopped being our default, and it started being our exception. So, where are we today? Well, we've RMRF'd legacy out of existence. Thank you. Every route, every line of code, all running through Laravel. There's no more catch-all route, there's no more reliance on legacy, just clean, tested, and modern PHP. Developer velocity, through the roof. New features that used to take weeks now take days, sometimes only hours. Bugs that were impossible to track down, they're now caught by tests. And if one slips through, we can finally capture it, track it, and report on it immediately. Then ship a fix. Most of the time, before our customers can even tell us about it. And speaking of those customers, they're brought back in. There's this level of dopamine hit that you get when a customer raises a suggestion in the morning and you're able to get it implemented by lunchtime. They are also more forgiving when things don't go according to plan because they can see velocity, they can see we're listening, they can see progress. Now, I told you about the migration, but I didn't touch on one of the most important parts of it, and that's how do we get buy-in? How do we convince management to invest months or years of engineering effort into a migration that doesn't add a single feature customers can see? You see, we couldn't lead with the code is ugly, and I don't like it, because no matter how true that was, leadership don't care about that. They care about the business outcomes. And so that's what we framed it around. You see, with proper testing infrastructure in place, we could catch bugs before customers do. Less firefighting meant engineering are focusing on features, not fixes. The support team, less times on escalations, more times on proactive support. And this just isn't about today, it's about the next decade. Laravel has a thriving ecosystem, regular updates, strong community support, and we're investing in that long-term future just as much as our customers are investing that in us. But ultimately, it's about our customers, because all these improvements, the testing, the stability, the modern tooling, they translate directly into a better service, because software that works reliably means better safety outcomes for the people who depend on us. We needed something more than just words to show our team why Laravel was the answer. Tables are a big part of the Okfolio platform, and they were slow for some of our largest clients. Endless loading spinners, timeout errors, limited to sometimes no server-side pagination, meant that if a customer had a filtered data set that may have been 10,000 results, we'd load that all up in the back end and ship it off to the front end, just for it to display the first 10 results. Page 2, do it again. That's what we focused on for our tech demo. So we got on a call with the whole team and we demoed them the current process, one they were all too familiar with. Then we switched to our new Laravel demo application. And we had a little jazzed up UI. We rendered a table with about 100,000 results, and we did that all in under a second. The team knew that this was possible, but seeing it in the context of our application blew their minds. It was an immediate green light. Between all of us here together, I feel like we kind of cheated, because Laravel gave us all of the tools to make that possible. A model filtered to some data, and we just returned a paginated response to the front end. But this is the playbook that we used. Make those small wins visible, demonstrate the benefits, and then get the buy-in for the bigger investments. So what did we learn? What would I tell the team and myself if we were to embark on a similar migration? Wrapping works. Laravel as the entry point with a catch-all to legacy gave us the safety net and flexibility that we needed. We could migrate at our own pace with no big bang moments. Migrations, testing, unified dependencies, the boring infrastructure improvements, that actually made the actual feature migration possible. We couldn't migrate effectively if our dev environment was broken. Today, we can ship faster, hire better, and we've reduced bugs. Leadership cares about outcomes, not the clean code. So if you're sitting on a legacy code base, frame your migration around the business value. That might help get you buy-in. But ultimately, if you're out there sitting on a legacy code base thinking to yourself, we could never migrate this, we thought exactly the same thing. Start small, prove value, and scale up, because the path from legacy to Laravel is possible.
Amazing. Now, just so that I can get this clear for everyone in the room, that was your first presentation?
Yep.
I do have a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure.
First, lots of people voted for this one, so that's the only reason I'm going to ask it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the employee assistance program like at Okfolio? Like, do they cover you for therapy for recovery of this horror show?
This is being recorded, isn't it? No comment.
What's your most memorable, like, oh shit moment?
Oh gosh. I think seeing the team's face when we demoed the first application and seeing that wow moment of maybe we can do it. That small 1% better every day type step. I think that was one of the most memorable moments.
Fantastic. Once again, thank you to Jordan.
Thanks everyone.